started, choose one piece of your main fabric, one piece of lining fabric and 2 pieces of cord or ribbon. Place your lining fabric and your main fabric right sides together and then pin or clip them along the 2 short edges. And you want to sew along those 2 edges just with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then just finger press those seams open just so it's easier when you turn it. Then slide your hands in between the fabric and flip it round so the 2 seams are touching each other. Then you want to just line up those seams and pin them in place so that they're nicely aligned when you actually go to sew them. On your lining fabric, mark 2 inches and 3 inches space, and then on your main fabric you want to mark 1 inch and another 1 inch space, and then flip it round, and on the other side of the main fabric again mark 1 inch and 1 inch in from the seam. This is going to show you where you want to start and stop sewing so that you're leaving a gap so that you can turn it all inside out, and also you're leaving a gap for where you're going to thread through the ribbon or the piping. So head to your sewing machine and starting from the lining side that you're not going to be starting and stopping on, just sew along that side. Keep going along over the pin, remove the pin. Then you want to start and stop and leave that 1 inch gap. That's where you're going to be threading in your piping or your ribbon later. Go all the way down that side and then flip it round. Again, leave that 1 inch space for your piping for later, and then just leave that second space, and that's where you're going to turn the whole thing inside out. Now, to give the drawstring bag a little bit of depth, we're going to make some very small boxy corners. So mark out 1 inch by 1/2 inch on all 4 corners, and then we're just going to simply cut those out. To make the boxy corner, you just simply pull out the bit that you've just cut. So you can see here I'm just pulling it out there and lying it flat against the seam, making sure that the seam is in the middle, and then you just want to pin that because we're just going to sew across that with a 1/4 inch so that when we turn it inside out you then have a nice little boxy corner, and you go ahead and do that on all 4 corners. Check they're all done, and then we head over to the sewing machine. Now with a 1/4 inch seam allowance you just want to sew across. Just do a little bit of back stitch at the beginning and the end just to make sure that it stays nice and secure once you've turned the bag inside out. Once you've sewn all 4 corners, then it's time to turn the whole thing inside out through that longer gap that you left in the lining. Finish turning it out and poke out all of those corners so they're nice and crisp, and then all that's left is for us to just sew up that lining piece, that hole that you've got left there. So just straighten it out and sew with a small stitch close to that seam. Turn the lining fabric into the main fabric, and you can see it's starting to look like a nice little drawstring pouch. Poke into those corners and then just finger press around the top edge and then press it flat with your iron. On to the last bit. You want to get your ruler and your erasable marker pen and just draw a line 1 inch down and then a further inch down, and these are the 2 lines that will line up with the holes that are either side, which is where you're going to be feeding through your piping or your ribbon. Flip it over and mark exactly the same spaces on the other side. So 2 lines, 1 line 1 inch down and a second line 1 inch down from that one. Head to the sewing machine and then just sew round the whole of the top of the bag following those lines. You can see here I've got 2 lines that have created a channel, and that's now where you're going to be threading through your pieces of string or piping or ribbon or whatever you're choosing to tie it together with. So get your 2 pieces and lay them out above your bag, and you can see I've got the tails of one facing one way and the tails of the other facing the other way, and that's what, by feeding them in, one set from the right and one set from the left, it gives you the 2 strings that you can pull apart, which is what creates the drawstring element. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, follow what I'm doing here and hopefully it will. So using a bobbin, or you could do this with a safety pin, thread those through and then tie off the ends into a knot. Take your second piece of string and again attach it with a bobbin or one of these funky little turning devices that I've got, and thread it in the other side. So you don't want to put it in the same side that you've just threaded into. So go to the other hole and thread it in that way. Tie that in a knot too and just snip it off so it's nice and neat, and there you go. You have got your drawstring bag. Poke out all the corners, make sure it's nice and neat, maybe give it a press in the iron if you need to, and then you can pull your drawstring close and ta-da, you have made a drawstring bag. And I've got a nice little home for my hair clips and my hair scrunchies. You can make these in all sizes and they can be used to store pretty much anything.